Less than 48 hours ago, November 18, 2025, to be exact, 6 of us nearly vanished forever. The place was Ravenwood Park, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. It all started at the Overlook, a scenic spot with a great view of the city skyline. It was around 1 in the morning when my friend, let's call him Darius, decided it was the perfect time to set off some mortar fireworks he bought in South Carolina. Now, the cops patrol the Overlook pretty heavily, so I suggested we move to a more secluded spot called the Back Bowl. It's this huge, circular meadow surrounded by a thick pine forest. There are no houses for at least half a mile, and the only way in is a long, winding access road that cuts through the trees like a dark, twisting intestine. We decided to park our 2 cars on a residential street just outside the park and walk the rest of the way. The access road is maybe 4/10 of a mile long, and it was pitch black. No lights, nothing. As we came around the final bend, we saw it. Our hearts just stopped. There were 8 or 9 vehicles parked randomly around the meadow. All of them were dark. No interior lights, no people visible. It was just this silent, menacing gathering of dark shapes. We absolutely should have turned around right then and there. But instead, Darius whispered, "It's probably just teens hooking up," and for some insane reason, we kept walking. We got about 20 yards from the edge of the woods when a pickup truck, with its lights completely off, rolled past us. It was going the other way, slow, like it was hunting for something. It reached the end of the access road, stopped, did a perfect 3-point turn, and started creeping back toward us. Still no lights. On pure instinct, we dove into the woods, hiding behind the first line of trees. The truck rolled past our position, and the windows were down, and I could smell 2 things very clearly: cigarette smoke and something sharper. Colder gun oil. That should have been the end of it. We should have stayed hidden, but Darius, the king of bad decisions, decided this was still a good idea. He lit a 200-gram firework cake anyway. The first mortar screamed into the sky and exploded in a shower of gold above the treetops. And in that instant, hell broke loose. Every single one of those parked vehicles turned on their headlights at once. High beams, all pointed directly at the woods, at us. It looked like a prison break, but in reverse. Doors flew open. Men started getting out, 6, maybe 7 of them manned. They were moving fast. Someone shouted, clear as day, there, in the woods. Engines roared to life. The first pickup, the one that had passed us, gunned its engine, jumped the curb, and plowed straight into the forest right after us. Its headlights were carving these terrifying tunnels of light through the pine trees. We just ran. We ran for our lives. Branches whipped our faces. Roots were grabbing at our ankles, trying to trip us up. Within 30 seconds, our group was completely split up. It was me, Selena, and Jay together. But Darius, Micah, and Trey were gone, lost somewhere to our left. Behind us, we heard the truck crashing through the woods, the shriek of metal grinding against tree trunks. Its high beams were sweeping back and forth like searchlights from a guard tower. We saw a ravine and dove in, sliding on our stomachs under a thick blanket of Japanese honeysuckle. It was so dense it completely blotted out the sky. Above us, we heard heavy boots land on the ground. 2 guys, armed with what looked like rifles and tactical flashlights, started sweeping the ridge right above our hiding spot. One of them spoke, and his voice was chillingly calm, almost bored. He said, "They lit off mortar. Find them." I heard Selena's breath hitch, a little sob escaping her. I immediately clamped my hand over her mouth, and I could feel her tears, hot and wet, on my palm. The truck was idling just 20 feet away. Its exhaust was curling in the headlights like ghostly fingers reaching for us. Someone revved the engine. The truck rolled forward a few feet, and we heard a loud crack as it snapped a young sapling in half. Minutes felt like hours. We started crawling on our bellies through thorns and briars. Our clothes were ripping, our skin was getting shredded, but we didn't dare make a sound. At one point, the absolute worst thing happened. Jay's phone screen lit up an incoming call from Darius. In the blackness of the woods, it was like a beacon. Instantly, we saw a rifle barrel swing toward the glow. Jay powered it off so fast he literally cracked the screen. It was a close call, way too close. After what felt like an eternity, we heard the truck back out of the woods. Engines started, and one by one, the vehicles peeled away, tires squealing on the asphalt. But we could still hear two sets of boots walking the ridgeline, slow and methodical. They were still hunting. We waited until exactly 4:17 a.m. I remember the time because the moon had finally set, and the darkness became absolute, total. Only then did we crawl out the far side of the meadow. We had to cross a creek, wading through waist-deep, freezing November water. We then bushwhacked for 2 miles through people's backyards until we finally stumbled into a Harris Teeter parking lot. We found out later that Darius and the others had made it out about 20 minutes before us. The second the trucks charged into the woods, they just made a run for it, sprinting straight back down the access road. They told us they saw one of the men. Clearly under a streetlight, he had tattoos all over his neck and was carrying an AR-15 slung over his shoulder. As casual as if it were a purse. We ended up at a Waffle House at dawn, shaken and freezing. We called the cops. A couple of detectives came, took our statements, but they looked bored, uninterested. They said it sounded like we de-stumbled onto a drug deal and that we should just stay out of the back bowl. There was no follow-up, no investigation, nothing. Yesterday, I drove past the entrance to the park around noon. The sun was out, everything looked normal. But I could see fresh tire tracks cutting across the grass where the truck had gone in. And there, lying in the dirt, was a single, empty mortar tube casing, looking just like a spent bullet. I'm deleting every photo from that night. We all are. Whatever those men were doing or protecting in the back bowl at 1 in the morning on a random Monday night, they were clearly ready to kill 6 college kids to keep it a secret. Next weekend is New Year's Eve. There will be fireworks everywhere. It's a good reminder that some places hunt back. Ravenwood's back bowl is one of them. And you can be sure we are never, ever going within 10 miles of that park again. Every night back in 2022, after my bartending shift in Austin, I'd hit the river trail loop. It's this 3-mile path along the Colorado River, lit by these sickly sulfur yellow lamps that make everyone look like a ghost. I liked it though. Even at 1 in the morning, there were always a few other people out. Insomniacs, dog walkers, couples arguing in Spanish. You know, safety in numbers. Or so I thought. It all started on a Wednesday. It felt like Friday the 13th had come early. I just pulled a double shift. My ears were still ringing from terrible karaoke, and I desperately needed to sweat the cheap tequila out of my system. I parked at the north entrance, laced up my running shoes, and started my usual 4-mile loop. About half a mile in, I noticed him. He was sitting on the one bench that faces away from the river, towards the trail. His hood was up, hands tucked into the pouch of a black hoodie, which was weird because it was easily 85 degrees out. He didn't have a phone, a water bottle, a dog, nothing. He just sat there, still as a statue, like he'd been carved from pure shadow. I passed within 10 feet of him. Didn't think much of it until I realized he was staring right at the exact spot my feet were hitting the pavement, not my face. My feet, a cold dread started to creep up my spine. I picked up my pace, trying to shake the feeling. 20 seconds later, I heard it. The soft scuff of sneakers, perfectly matching my new, faster tempo. My heart started to hammer. I slowed down, he slowed down. I sped up, he sped up. It was like we were connected, synced to the same invisible metronome. My mind raced. I pulled out my phone and pretended to take a call, projecting my voice as loud as I could. "Hey babe, yeah, I'm on the trail, almost done." The footsteps behind me didn't even hesitate. Panic set in. I made a sharp left onto a narrow dirt cutoff that climbs up a steep bluff. It's unlit, rugged, and nobody ever uses it at night. The footsteps followed, the sound changing from scuffs on pavement to the crunch of dry leaves and twigs. I broke into an all-out sprint up the incline, my lungs burning, my calves screaming in protest. When I reached the top, I spun around, gasping for air. And he was already there, 10 feet below me on the slope, standing perfectly still, his head tilted up under the hood. The nearest streetlight was a good 50 yards away, so all I could see was the oval of his face pale, blank, featureless. It was like someone had taken the moon and rubbed it smooth. I didn't wait. I just ran. I sprinted through the dark back to the south entrance parking lot, fumbled with my keys, and jumped into my truck. I locked the doors and peeled out of there, doing 40 in a 15-mile-per-hour zone. In my rearview mirror, I saw him step out from the trees. He wasn't running. He was just walking calmly, hands in his pockets, watching me drive away. I didn't go back to that trail for 2 weeks. When I finally did, it was broad daylight, a busy Saturday afternoon, surrounded by disc golf brothers and moms pushing strollers. I had to know. I found the bench, the one where he'd been sitting. And there, carved into the wood in letters 2 inches deep, was a single word. Mine. I took a picture. But I deleted it 10 minutes later. Every time I opened my phone, I felt him looking over my shoulder. After that day, the watching never really stopped. He'd be across the street when I left my apartment, a silhouette on the rooftop of the parking garage when I finished my shift. One time, I came out to my truck and found a perfect footprint pressed into the thick layer of dust on the hood. It was my exact Shua Brooks running shoe. Size 11. There was no mud or dust anywhere else on the truck. Just that one single print. I bought a gun. I even took the safety course, but I never carried it. Deep down, I knew bullets wouldn't help against something that could match my heartbeat from 100 yards away. The last time I saw him clearly was the night I moved out of Austin for good. It was 3 in the morning, and I was carrying the last box to my truck. He was standing under the busted streetlight at the end of my block, hood up, motionless. When I blinked, he was 10 feet closer. I blinked again, and he was just 5 feet away. It was like a bad jump cut in a horror movie. I threw the box into the truck bed, jumped behind the wheel, and floored it. In the rearview mirror, he never moved. He just got smaller and smaller until my taillights swallowed him completely. That was 6 months ago. I live in Oregon now. It's different climate, different time zone, 2,000 miles away. I still run, but only on treadmills, in brightly lit gyms with floor-to-ceiling windows and cameras everywhere. But sometimes, when the belt hums under my feet at exactly 6.8 miles per hour, my old PC swear I can hear it. A soft echo, a scuff behind me. Quiet as a heartbeat, matching every single stride. Thanks for listening. If you have a story that keeps you up at night, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there. We didn't have TikTok when I was 13. We had cracked sidewalks, broken streetlights, and this massive drainage tunnel under the old railroad tracks near Maple Ridge Estates in Columbus, Ohio. We all called it the Echo Tunnel because anything you shouted into it came back 3 times louder. That summer of 1998, me, Jake, and Marco basically lived there after sundown. The plan for that particular night was simple. Jake had swiped a whole carton of his dad's menthol cigarettes, and we were looking for a place to try them where our parents would never think to check. We rode our bikes over just after 10, coasting without lights because the moon was huge and orange, and we felt like nothing in the world could touch us. The tunnel was this long, 30-foot concrete tube, about 8 feet high, with a little stream of water running down the middle. Graffiti covered every inch of the wall's faded band names, old phone numbers, and a class of '84 rules that was barely visible. About halfway inside, there was this rusty metal platform. We climbed up, letting our legs dangle over the darkness, passing the cigarettes around like we were a bunch of grown-ups. And then we heard it. A wet slapping sound, like bare feet on concrete, coming from the far end of the tunnel where it curved into total blackness. We all just froze. Marco instinctively snapped his lighter shut. We listened. Nothing. Just the sound of crickets outside and water dripping somewhere in the dark. It happened again. Slap. Slap. Slap, but closer this time. Jake whispered, "It's probably just a raccoon," but his voice was shaking. I grabbed my little keychain flashlight and aimed it down the tunnel. The beam was weak. It only showed wet walls and dust motes floating in the air. We laughed it off, called ourselves a bunch of babies, and lit another cigarette to prove how brave we were. 5 minutes later, the sound wasn't footsteps anymore. It was a voice, a small, high-pitched, and really strange voice, echoing from somewhere in the middle of the tunnel. It said, "Come play." We jumped so hard, the metal platform rang like a bell. I swung the flashlight around wildly. The tunnel was empty, just that dark curve ahead. Marco, trying to act tough, cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Who's there?" The tunnel threw it right back at us, booming. There, then silence. I started to climb down the ladder, one rung at a time. The voice came again, closer now, almost sounding friendly. "I'm stuck. Help me." A cold chill shot right through me. It didn't make any sense. There was no way a little kid could be up on that platform. There wasn't even a ladder on the other side. Jake grabbed my shoulder. "Ethan, don't. Let's just get out of here." But I was 13 and stubborn. I dropped the last few feet to the tunnel floor, my sneakers splashing in the water. Started walking toward the curve, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. Behind me, I could hear Jake whispering my name, but I just kept going. 10 feet, 15 feet. And then my light caught something new on the wall. It was a small, fresh handprint right at knee height. The voice giggled. "Catch me if you can." That's when I completely lost it. I just ran straight into the dark curve, yelling for whatever it was to show itself. My voice bounced off the walls until it sounded like 100 people were screaming all at once. And then I saw it. At the far opening of the tunnel, moonlight was pouring in, and it perfectly outlined a tiny figure. It looked like a 4-year-old kid, barefoot, wearing a little nightshirt. It turned its head toward me, but it turned way too far, like an owl. For just 1 second, my flashlight beam hit its face. There were no eyes, just 2 dark, empty hollows. I screamed, dropped the light, and ran blind. I crashed right into Jake and Marco, who were waiting by the platform. All 3 of us fell in a heap. We scrambled up the ladder, climbed over the embankment, and got on our bikes so fast the pedals tore into our legs. We didn't stop pedaling until we reached Jake's backyard, a full 6 miles away. We were gasping for air, with blood running down our shins. His parents were asleep. We locked ourselves in the basement, sitting under a single bare light bulb, just staring at each other, too afraid to even make a sound. And then we heard the knocking. Slow, 3 times, on the glass patio door. Knock, knock, knock. Jake's mom never locked that door. We slowly turned around. A woman was standing outside on the deck. She looked middle-aged, her skin was pale, and she was wearing a long nightgown, even though it was a hot July night. She smiled at us, but it was way too wide, like a smile in an old, creepy photograph. She raised one hand and waved, but only with her fingers. Jake's voice cracked. "We have to wake someone up." The woman tilted her head, still smiling that awful smile, and then she spoke in the exact same little kid voice from the tunnel. "Catch me." The patio light flickered once, and then she was just gone. No footsteps. She just vanished. We didn't sleep that night. As soon as the sun came up, we rode back to the tunnel, armed with baseball bats and a big flashlight. The small handprint was still on the wall, but now it was higher, adult-sized, and the fingers were spread out, like someone had dragged a wet, painted palm all the way down the concrete. We never found my little flashlight, and we never ever went back to that tunnel after dark again. Even now, whenever I drive past those old railroad tracks on the I-270, I roll up my windows, no matter how hot it is outside. Because sometimes, when the moon is full and orange, they say you can still hear it drifting up from the storm drains, a tiny voice, asking drivers on the highway to come play. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have a creepy hometown legend of your own, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there.